everyone, this is Mindy Eggen for Tailored Expressions, and today I'm creating this Christmas Village card featuring the Home for the Holidays collection. Let's take a look at the supplies that I'll be using. I have the Home for the Holidays layering stencil, Santa Stop Here stamp and die set, the Home for the Holidays cover plate, and I'm also going to be using the Twinkle Twinkle background stamp. I have an embossing pad, the glitter grab and fluffy snow. For the inks, I'm going to be using rose water, raspberry sorbet, poblano pepper, potato chip, Oreo, confetti cake, saltwater taffy, and sweet basil will be for my finished card project. Some additional supplies that I'll be using include a palette knife, my Tailored Expressions blending brushes. I have repositionable tape and a tape runner, liquid glue, reverse tweezers, some clay snowflakes, and for cardstock, I have saltwater taffy and sugar cube, and then I also have Post-it tape and teal tape. I'll also be using my teal Misty and some grid paper. I'm going to start by ink blending my background. So I am using this grid paper so it has the vertical alignment for an A2 size card panel. I am placing some repositionable tape on the back of a piece of sugar cube cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and sticking that down onto my grid paper. I'm going to take the first layer of the stencil. Each stencil is labeled down in the bottom right-hand corner so you know which order to start with. And I'm lining up the edged lines on the stencil with the edge of my cardstock and then holding that down with Post-it tape. The first color I'm going to start with is rosewater ink, so I place that over in my ink stand. And I'm going to grab a light pink blending brush and I'm going to start by picking up that ink and applying that to all the open areas of the stencil, including those little registration marks over on the side, which is going to help me with placement for the rest of the stencils. After I filled in the entire background, I'm going to just peel this first layer of the stencil up and bring in raspberry sorbet for the second layer of the stencil. I use the squares on the side to help with alignment for perfect placement. Then I'm holding that down once again with Post-it tape and bringing in that darker shade of ink. Now on this stencil up in the top row, the middle house has a string of lights, and that is kind of a delicate area. So I'm going to go over that area fairly light-handed so my bristles of the brush don't move that fine area of the stencil. Sometimes just lightly brushing your brush over the area without going in a circular motion will help with that too. I'll then remove this second layer of the stencil and I'm going to bring in the third layer of the stencil, which is going to be adding some additional roofs and doors to the houses that are already in place. And for this example, I'm going to use poblano pepper. So once again, I'm going to go over all the open areas of the stencil. This stencil does have another string of lights. That one is down in the bottom row here in the center. I'm going to try and hold that down with my finger and just lightly go over those areas, or again, just using the bristles on your brush to brush on the ink instead of the circular motions. I'll remove this layer of the stencil and bring in the next layer, which is going to be filling in the windows. For this one, I'm going to use potato chip to give my windows a nice glow. This would be a nice one that once your card is all done, maybe going over the glow of the window with something like a glossy accents to really make it shine. Our next layer of the stencil is going to be adding on some snowy peaks to our houses. And to do this, we are going to be using the Tailored Expressions Glitter Grab and Fluffy Snow. I'm going to start with the glitter grab and a palette knife. I'm just going to scoop some out of the jar and then start applying that down the front of my stencil. So I'm going to ice this just like I would a cake, making sure to just have that nice and smooth across the front. When you are done with this, you want to make sure you rinse off your stencil right away. Any excess, I'm just going to scoop it back into my jar and then clean off my palette knife with a baby wipe along with the edge of my glitter grab jar. Then I can remove the stencil and I can take this over to my sink and wash it off right away. Or if you have a pan of hot soapy water, you can place it in there and let it soak. I'll then take the Tailored Expressions Fluffy Snow and I have a piece of scratch paper. I'm going to sprinkle this fluffy snow all over my cardstock and it is going to stick to that glitter grab we just applied. So I'm kind of shaking my cardstock and then I will tip that and just flick off any excess, and the rest of that I can put back into the jar. So we are going to set this off on the side to dry, and I'm going to work on a background and some sentiments. I'm going to be using the Twinkle Twinkle background. I have a piece of saltwater taffy that I'm going to be stamping this on. I start out by removing the foam insert of my Misty, and I place my background stamp in my Misty and then pick it up with the door. And then I'm taking that saltwater taffy, I'm placing a little bit of repositionable tape on the back. I'll place that over my background stamp and then close the back of the Misty. So it's going to, my cardstock is going to stick to the bottom of the Misty and it's in perfect placement. I am going for a tone on tone look for my background. So I'm going to be stamping this in saltwater taffy ink. I'll ink up the background and stamp that down onto the saltwater taffy cardstock. You could also use Versamark ink and that would give you a similar look. I do want this to stand out just a little bit more. So I am going to stamp the background 2 more times. You could also do one step up and use confetti cake ink. While my Misty tool is out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiments from the Santa Stop Here stamp set. And I'm actually going to use that particular sentiment, Santa Stop Here, and also the silhouette of Santa and his reindeer. So for this, I am using Oreo ink that I'm stamping down onto sugar cube cardstock. And this one I will stamp twice to make sure I'm getting a really good impression. I will take the coordinating dies for each of these, hold them down with the teal tape, and run them through my die cut machine. I'm also going to use the rest of that cardstock to die cut out the sentiment 2 more times and the silhouette 2 more times as well from plain white cardstock. I'm going to use liquid glue and some reverse tweezers to layer these together to create dimension for each of them. Back to my background, I wanted to add a little bit more interest to it, so I'm going to take confetti cake ink and a blending brush, and I'm going to go around all of the outer edges of my stamped background. And this is just going to help draw your eye to the center of the cardstock where all the houses are going to be. I'll then take the Home for the Holidays cover plate. I'm going to place this over the top of my background and run that through my die cut machine. This is actually meant to die cut out the houses from your blended panel, but since mine is drying, I am going to do a little visual trick. So I'm going to be placing this over the top of my houses instead of die cutting my houses out. This also lets me have a colored background to my houses. So this is a card panel I did the night before where everything is nice and dry. I used the exact same colors except for the green. Instead of poblano pepper, I used sweet basil. I did die cut out that cover plate 1 more time from saltwater taffy, and I'm going to layer it together with that liquid glue just to add a little bit more dimension to the front of the card. I'm going to go ahead and add my blended panel onto a side folding card base just using my tape runner. And then I'm going to take my front panel, add liquid glue to the back of that. I go around all of the edges and the inside pieces as well, the smaller strips, and I'm place this over the top, lining it up with my houses. So it almost gives the look of die cut houses when really we used the frame. Then I have my sentiment and my silhouette, so I'm going to attach these to the front of the card panel using my liquid glue. You could also use foam squares to pop those up, but since I have already added dimension to them using the rest of my cardstock, I didn't feel I needed any more dimension. I found some of these clay snowflakes in my Tailored Expressions stash, so I'm going to add a few of these around my sentiment and my silhouette image just by picking them up with a tool and adding them with liquid glue. And that is my finished card project using the Home for the Holidays set. Now I do have some other examples that I want to share with you. I played with some different color combinations. So first we have our background that I did earlier in the video where I had used poblano pepper. So this one's going to be really fun to finish off. But then I also have another one that I did in browns and greens. And I thought this gave it kind of a gingerbread house type of feel. And then I have another one that I did kind of monochromatic and added some white splatters to give the look of snow falling over the houses, which would look really nice just that way, or adding a white frame over the top. I hope these examples have jump-started your creativity using the Home for the Holidays set. All of these products are now available over at tailoredexpressions.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.